Here we're going to start a section on monetary policy. And monetary policy is different from fiscal policy in that it's all about how a society decides the supply of money. So societies have to make choices about how they're going to supply money into that civilization. All right? So that's what we're looking at is monetary policy. Okay. So the first thing we need to understand is what is the price of money? Now, a lot of you will sit there and say, well, $1 is worth $1. What do you mean the price of money? Money is what it is itself. But when you ask that question in terms of time, if I want your dollar now, then I have to pay you back $1.10 in the future. And what we call that is interest. Okay? So what you need to understand is that the price of money is the interest rate. Okay, let me say that again. The price of money is the interest rate. I can actually go out and buy other people's money. Yeah, if I want to borrow some money to buy a house, then I go out and I buy their money. They write a contract and say for 30 years you're going to pay us 4% interest as you pay this money back. And I use that money to buy the house. But I'm not technically buying the house, I'm buying the money. Okay? So the house is mine and I have it, and then I'm paying back the loan to the bank over time because I bought their money and I bought it for 4%. That's the interest rate. All right? So if we were to understand this in terms of our old supply and demand curves, we'd take a look here and we'd see that we've got the price of money on this axis, and that is going to be the interest rate. And the quantity of money is going to be over here, how much we have. All right? Now, in this example, we're going with a standard rate. And it could be a gold standard or it could be a Bitcoin standard, but the key is not the thing, gold or Bitcoin. The key is standard. All right? Because if it's standard, then our supply curve is straight up and down. There's no increasing the supply or decreasing the supply. It simply is. And so our supply curve is fixed. It is a standard. All right? And so what happens here is that if I want the money from the bank and I want them to give me some money and this is what they have, then it turns out at that point that's going to be 5% interest. Now, what if lots and lots of people go to the bank and say, I want money, I want money? Essentially what they're doing is they are demanding more money, and this curve will shift up, right? And if this demand curve goes up this way, then we would be at a new point, and that would be a higher interest rate, okay? So if this demand curve shifts up and out, then it would move up the supply curve and we would have a higher interest rate. So what would raise the price of money would be the demand. There'd be no change in supply. Same thing if no one wanted to take a loan, the bank would then lower their interest rates because they're trying to make money on their money and they're trying to shop around for, hey, if you won't take it at 5%, would you take it at 4%? And so what we'd have in this case is that the determining factor of the price of money is the market. All right? And if that's the case, there would be no inflation. So if you have a standard money, you can't have inflation because the money supply is fixed. It doesn't change. All right? So under this system, there would be no inflation. Debt would be what it is. Purchasing power would stay the same always. The only thing that would change is the market forces. And so that's what you're leaving this up to is the market. All right? So this is what has been understood for thousands of years as the way things work. Okay. There was a guy by the name of Rothschild, back in the late Middle Ages and into the Renaissance period that said, you know what? Let's try doing something like this. Let's put in place something called a central bank. And he went and had his 4 sons go to the 4 capitals of Europe, and they all shopped this idea to the governments there. And it turned out that none of the governments really wanted to do that because this is the way you do things. And they kind of understood that this probably has some hidden agendas. But what happened is that Napoleon was taking over most of Europe, and the British needed money to fight their war. And so in order to defeat Napoleon, they adopted this system. Because under this system, the central bank does not have a supply of money that is fixed. It has a supply of money that can change. And so under this system, the supply of money can increase or decrease based upon the central bank making it increase or decrease. You can print extra money under this scenario. And so now it's not just demand that's moving up and down here. What you've also got is that the supply curve can move, producing more or less money based upon the price. We've introduced a new variable that now changes. In fact, the central bank can, if they want to, simply put more money into the system. And if they do that, then as you see here, the price of money will go down. It'll make the interest rate go down as the quantity of money is increased. So the central bank can simply push more money into the system, and that will cause the interest rate to go down, thus juicing your economy. More people will be like, hey, low interest rates, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to buy a car, and all this kind of stuff. And it provides more money so that it can be spent. Now, the reason governments love central banks is because who gets to spend this extra money that just got put into the system? Well, the government gets to spend that money. And so the British said, okay, we'll put in a central bank so that we can print extra money. The government can then use that to fight its wars. And that's how Napoleon was defeated. All right? In fact, he says in his memoirs, I was defeated by a nation of clerks and bankers and shopkeepers. Okay? So he understood. Where did the British get all that extra money to pay for things to fight him? Well, they created a central bank, and now they could wage a war because they could have infinite amounts of money if they wanted to. All they had to do was just print more and more and more and more. And so under this situation, because there is no standard, you can have infinite inflation. All right? So that's the idea here. This was brought by Amschel Rothschild was his name. And if you Google them, you'll find that the Rothschilds today are the richest family in the world. They're kind of hidden. They don't really appear in the history books much. They don't appear to be doing anything, yet they do quite a bit. So now it's time to put on your tinfoil hat and go out there and search for the Rothschilds, okay? Because they're the ones who came up with this central banking system. And you're going to find that almost every country on the planet has now adopted this system. So this is the system that we're going to talk about going forward. When we talk about monetary policy, what we're really just talking about is this central bank system, because it has a lot of buttons to push and levers to pull, and it's the dream of people who want to manage an economy and make it work the way they want. This over here could be summed up in one page. Work hard, buy gold, get the stuff you want in exchange. Okay? Same thing with Bitcoin. So this right here represents what most of humanity has done throughout history. This is the new modern ideal of how we're going to decide our monetary policy. All right? So I'll hear your questions in class.